Welcome back everyone to another Dev Diary overview, and this time we're going to have the Dev Diary for Naval Production Repair and Damage and the Traits one. I didn't do the Traits one last week because it's like essentially like two paragraphs of things I can talk about, and then there's a bunch of stuff about modding that I do not know anything about, so I will just leave it at that. So essentially, Naval Production Repair and Damage, which just came out yesterday, it's kind of interesting because it is incorporating some elements that did already exist in a few mods. The ship production part. So the current system, obviously, you can assign 15 dockyards to produce an individual vessel, but that means that you can produce things a lot faster than they historically were. And for example, a few mods like Black Ice. Black Ice in this regard is pretty good because it limits production to 5 dockyards. Here they decided to kind of switch it up. So convoys can use 15, light ships or escorts can use 10, and capital ships use 5. Which is an interesting choice, to say the least, because their idea is that, obviously, to have more dockyards means that you're, in a way, assigning more production capacity to it, which is pretty difficult to do if, dockyards are a fixed thing. You cannot... It's not like, you can produce guns in 10 different factories. You're still going to have, a lot more guns. If you're producing one battleship, you can only produce it in a single dockyard. Now, of course, dockyards are an abstraction, and so they represent also, other types of industrial capacity that is supportive to the actual dockyard itself. So that's why you can stack up a few. But they still decided to... have light ships have 10 dockyards. We'll see how the results play out in terms of that, whether or not it's going to be realistic or anything like that. It's definitely a bit of a nerf to some countries that rely on submarines, because you can only do 10 per submarine, although I guess you could say that you can have more in parallel. Anyway, this is going to result in a bit like in Darkest Hour, a Hearts of Iron game, where it takes a long time to build a battleship, but it's not that costly in IC. Of course, in that game, you had unified IC. You didn't have naval IC and military IC. So, yeah, it's going to result in you having a lot of different productions for single capital ships instead of just going for 15, 15, 15, 15. So yeah, that's going to make ships more valuable overall, because it's going to take longer to replace them, but you're also, in the long term, going to have, a lot of ships. They're just not going to come staggered. They're all going to come at once, because you're all going to be building them at once. So it's going to change around the metagame of how different countries stack up against each other in terms of navies a little bit, because, hell, it's going to take a while for few battleships to come online. It's gonna make, for example, the United States have a big power spike when it comes to the mid game, because that's when all of the ships that they've started to build at the start are gonna come off the dockyards and into the Navy. So that's that. It's also possible to add custom names when you set up construction. Yeah, right. There's the ship names stuff. The perfect time to remember your battleship awesome custom names rather than having to remember and do it once they're done. So that's pretty good. And they've also changed around the way you define capital ships. It says it's going to include certain design elements in your ships, such as a carrier, flight deck, or heavy guns. So it's not just, heavy cruisers, battleships, and carriers that are capital ships. It depends on the size of the guns or the carrier flight deck. The way that they're phrasing this kind of implies that there's going to be a naval designer that's in a way more intricate. So perhaps you could have heavy cruisers with medium guns instead of heavy guns. Doesn't seem like they're actually going to have specified calibers, but you can kind of figure out what you're putting on your ships. 155 millimeter, 203 millimeter, or heavier if you're, because, you know, obviously, like, heavy cruiser guns are going to be something like you see in, like, New Orleans class, you know, the later tier American heavy cruisers in the war, or something like the Japanese heavy cruisers. Whereas medium guns, it's going to be something like more like the Baltimore class or something like that. So you can, medium guns or light guns, I guess, would be a light cruiser gun. So you can kind of see what they mean by those euphemisms. And also carrier flight deck apparently is a design element. That is interesting. I wonder if you can have, because maybe you can convert battleships to carriers, something like that. Because, you know, carrier flight deck design element, maybe that just means that you can have different types of carriers depending on what hull you choose. Because it sounds like that's separate from just the carrier hull, because aircraft carrier hull would, like, you know, automatically mean that you have a carrier flight deck, right? Who knows? Who knows how that's going to work? That's just speculation, but it would be awesome if you could do, like, a historical thing where maybe, like, that would be too big now, would it? Like, you're building your battleship, and then you're like, shit, I don't need more battleships, I need more carriers. And then you have a modular construction, right? So perhaps the hull is complete, but the deck and the guns are not being constructed, and you can switch that around to an aircraft carrier flight deck, and then you make a carrier. Like, that's not exactly how it works in real life, but it is kind of, and it would be awesome, but I don't think they're going to do it. It would be too complicated. And then they have the ship repair, which is the other kind of thing that kind of tells me that that's not the way it's going to work, because I said that they're going to have, like, this modular type of designer, but I don't think that the modules will really matter that much in game, and I'm going to tell you why in a bit. So ship repair. Repair has also changed drastically. Before, repairing a vessel was free and just took time in a naval base. Now it's using your naval industry to do so. So you can decide how many dockyards to assign as a max, and the level of the naval base will decide how much can be leveraged in each one. So if you have a level 5 naval base, you can leverage 5 dockyards there and repair 5 ships at once. So essentially, the naval bases are just the containers at this point for the actual naval industry. So you see that this German player over here has assigned 6 dockyards to repair because his ships are not in the best of ways, and free to build ships. So yeah, and also you can see, like, the repair capacity, we're just gonna call it, to the right side. I'm not sure what that other icon is. I've already seen that icon, but I have no idea what it is. Anyway, so yeah, that's the way he's building. And you can see that there's an icon on the Deutschland heavy cruiser. Now, that is the new criticals system, which we're going to talk about in a bit. Bases can be prioritized for receiving dockyards if you have a lot of fleets suffering at once in various places, and can even be disabled for repair, so you do not accidentally send ships to repair where the enemy will sink them. I mean, wouldn't just be easier for the AI to not be retarded, but I don't know. You can even repair in friendly ports if you have docking rights, so you can reenact the River Plate, but are likely to have lower priority than their ships if there is a competition for attention, which is good. Then you have the Deutschland heavy cruiser there, and you can see that there's a broken propeller which gives minus 90% naval speed. So it can barely move. I guess it's representing how it's getting tugged along by other ships, because, you know, in real life, if your propeller's broken and you're a modern ship, you don't have sails, you're stuck. But obviously they tow it. If you look closely at the damaged Deutschland heavy cruiser, you will see that there is a warning icon on top of it. This signifies that it has taken a critical hit to its propeller and is suffering a big penalty to speed. So this is the critical hits. On top of the propeller damage shown up above, there are a lot of different critical hits a ship can suffer in combat. The idea behind these is to add some cool storytelling to the fate of ships and to introduce some RNG, because, you know, don't have enough of that. For example, imagine there is a lucky hit on a fast and powerful German surface raiding vessel, damaging its propeller or engine. Suddenly, it is no longer able to escape the Royal Navy's wrath as is planned to do. I wonder what they're referencing. Absolutely no idea. Yeah, that's just, you know, a bit of pandering to the Verabooz, because, you know, Bismarck wouldn't have been destroyed if it hadn't taken that direct hit. Different kinds of hits have different effects and will also cause different amounts of direct damage. We're still finalizing the amount of types that we have, but there is a non-complete list to whet your appetites. So there's main turrets, destroyed, reduced attack on main weapons. Secondary batteries, destroyed, reduced attack on secondary weapons. So this tells us that there's going to be a difference between main and secondary battery damage. Probably, you know, only important for battleships, really. Broken propeller, lower speed, as we see. Rudder damage, reduced ability to disengage, so they're kind of stuck in place. Magazine hit is massive damage. Pretty interesting. Torpedo tubes, so that's just going to be a crit, you know. Just fuck your battleship. Torpedo tubes destroyed, reduced torpedo attack and damage. So that's for destroyers and light cruisers and submarines. Heavy fires, reduced organization and heavy damage. Ballast tanks inoperable, reduced stealth for subs because they have to surface. Radar inoperable, reduced detection. So yeah, you need to go back and repair. Now this is what tells me that they're not going to have a modular ship system that works in combat. It is that, like, these criticals seem like they're kind of unique, and also they are on and off. So you either have the critical or you don't. Now maybe they can have different grades of critical hit, like instead of broken propeller it can be a damaged propeller, and instead of minus 90% it can be minus 40%. But still, that is essentially like it is either that way or nothing. What would have been pretty cool to have is that the modules that you design the ship with actually, it's difficult to explain, but like the modules that you design the ship with carry through when the ship is on the actual map when it is fighting. So they can take damage, they can be repaired, they can be upgraded. That's what, you know, would have been, I think, pretty nice. That's kind of what I was envisioning. So it would be the same kind of system as this critical system in a way, but it would be more flexible because it would just be easier to see, you know, what your ship is made of in a way. And but I guess they're just not going to have that. And the modularness of it is just going to be limited to the designer, I guess. I don't know. It would be easier to like visualize what I'm talking about. There's a few games that do this kind of system. Well, of course, a lot of 4X games actually, where you have modular ship design, and that carries through into the combat. So, for example, your like weapons can be damaged or something like that. Or, in a way, World of Warships actually has that, but it's not as easy to see because it's all kind of hidden. There's, I think, Pacific Fleet also has that. Battle Stations has that, but it's very simple in Battle Station. And also, you do not design the ship. And there's also Pacific Storm, which is a very old strategy game that did exactly that. Maybe there's a few others. Maybe like the Gary Grisby's War in the Pacific, but I'm not sure about that. I've never played that game. So yeah, that would have been pretty cool, but unfortunately it does not. Also, there's a few Admiral traits that interact with the critical system, and the Admiral traits are the other thing that they're adding. So it's basically bringing the Admirals up to date with the Generals. So you know how the Generals obviously have different kinds of traits and different stats. They've just copied defense and attack over, which, you know, pretty self-explanatory what they're going to do. And then they've added maneuver and coordination skills to Admirals as opposed to logistics and... what the fuck was the other one? Maneuver. So as opposed to those, you still have maneuver, and then you have coordination, which is just about like engaging, disengaging, and no, that's maneuver. Coordination is about mission efficiency. So yeah, as Admirals level up, they have earnable traits as well as personality traits. Some of them are the same as the Generals, like Career Officer, you can see on John Cunningham. And others are obviously Admiral specific, like battleship adherent. I wonder what that's going to entail, but most likely bonuses to battleships and malices to aircraft carriers. There are also assignable traits that you can unlock and tailor your admirals to. So you can see these traits, and we can see them down there. I'll check them out in a bit. And yeah, then they're going to be adding more to that. And they get earnable traits, obviously. Obviously, some of them carry over. Finally, there's more traits and help in different naval terrain. See the other feature. As admirals level up, they gain free points across their skills for each level, more likely in their strong points. Every second level, they also unlock... Wait, they gain 3 points across their skills for each level. So I guess 1, 1, 1 or 1, 2, 0, something like that. Every second level, they also unlock the slots needed to assign traits, similar to how it works for generals. The assignable traits will be in man the guns, while the base stuff like personality traits and earnable traits will be in the free patch, just like Waking the Tiger's general traits. So this is the trait tree, how it's going to look like. So obviously you have a submarine branch, then looks like you branch off into either stealth or attack, and yeah, that's just going to change around how your lovely submarines perform. There's fleet protector, which is going to be better escorts. Fly swatter is AA, and that's cruisers, so it's a bit like World of Warships. Superior Tactician is just in general buffs to the whole fleet. I'm guessing it's going to be about, mission efficiencies and engagement with all that kind of stuff. Smokescreen Specialist, probably to hide your retreat. Concealment Expert, again, to, have lower visibility. Then there's Blockade Runner, which is going to be interacting with mines and probably running away. Spotter, spotting enemies. Air Controller is obviously for aircraft carriers, and there's quite the branch into either fighters, dive bombers, or torpedoes. Everyone's going to pick torpedoes. And then there's Ironside for big capital ships, and one of them is going to be actually cool, Ground Pounder, probably increase the efficiency of shore bombardment. And then you either... have the Safety First and Crisis Magician, which is probably going to be about like emergency not having as bad of a critical, or better gunnery. And actually there's 4 terrain traits, which tells us the different types of terrain that are going to be in the game for navies, rather for ocean and seas. There's going to be cold water, probably near the Arctic. Wonder what that's going to do, but cool. There's inshore, which probably hides ships. Blue water, standard ocean terrain. And brown water. I wonder if they're gonna consider like the Mediterranean brown water. They should not. But brown water essentially is shallow seas, so coastal. Coastal or particular like sea zones, like maybe the Black Sea would be considered brown water. I'm not sure about that. But yeah, you can see that Brown Water Expert is pretty good on that. So yeah, that's just going to be about it. So I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the diary, and tell me what you think. I'll see you soon.